Composing Gloves here with Amp Studio, and this is the beginner series. So if you're brand new, this is the series for you. Let's go ahead and dive right in by just making something, and we'll cover the ideas as they come along. I think seeing them in context goes a long way towards, making it make sense. So first off, we start off with on the side here, there's notion of tracks. So you can add tracks by clicking, and tracks can hold pre-recorded audio or they can run instruments. So if you click on a track, your track inspector should show up. It's not down here at the moment because I added a track and deleted it. So in order to see it, come over here, there's one called the track inspector. It's this one right here. And these menus, by the way, just make different parts of Amped show up. So if a piece is missing, chances are one of these buttons will bring it up for you. So this is the track inspector, and in here we have an important concept. It's called the device chain. So track 1 has this device on it. We add another track, you see its device chain is empty. In another one, its device chain is also empty. So if we have things in the device chain, it will determine how that track sounds. So this one we'll call, our lead synth. So I'm just going to call it lead synth and hit enter. And right now, this track is connected to this synthesizer. If we hit edit, it brings up the window to edit the synthesizer. There are a bunch of devices you can add. If you go to add device, we can have here all of these as instruments. These are things that make noise. And then we also have effects. These are things that they don't make noise, but they change how the noise sounds. So for example, right now, I've got this synthesizer and I have a MIDI keyboard in front of me. But let's say you don't have one. You could double click to add a pattern, a clip to work on. And if you double click on the clip, it brings up a piano roll. Now this is where we can input notes. So if we pull this up, and let's say that you don't know music theory. So let's say we're very beginner. This is our first attempt at things. There is ways to still do things that are pretty useful. If we go to Chord Creator, you can actually create some chords for us. So let's go ahead and go with an A minor chord first. Now we'll add a chord and we'll make this a D minor. We'll add another chord. We'll go for a G. And then for our last chord, let's go for an E minor. So by default, we've got our chords here. They even label them for us. It's pretty fantastic. Let's go ahead and toggle this off. Actually, let's go ahead and toggle this off. If you want to sound better, just right out the gate, one of the first things you should do is take these blocky chords and try to make them a little more smooth. You see how these 3 notes are all up here and then these ones are lower? We really want to have them be a bit smoother. It'll just help. At the beginning, just think of it like that. As you get further into theory, you get into this thing called voice leading, which talks about how one note in a chord should go to another note in a chord. But for now, we're just going to make it look smoother. So to do that, I'm going to click these 2 notes. They're kind of high and there's nothing really correlated to them. And I'm going to hit shift down. And that will bring them the same note, just 1 octave lower. So the thing about music is if I play the note C, that's one of the notes. If I play it an octave lower, it sounds like the same note, just lower. So by hitting Control up down, or is it Shift? Shift up down, you're able to move them by an octave. So it's the same note, it's just higher or lower. So now this looks a lot smoother. If we take this, let's take this top one and move it down an octave. And this looks pretty smooth. I quite like this. Let's hear how it sounds. So we'll just move our playhead at the top here. And it should be worth noting there's 2 playheads. There's one for the pattern we're working on, which is this guy. And there's one up here. And there's a repeat zone for the master area. So let's go ahead and open that up to cover the entire pattern. And if we move this, you'll notice it matches both of them. So we'll go ahead and move it to the start and hit spacebar. And let's say, hey, let's try moving this note over here down an octave so we get this sort of down, this like bom, bom, like this resolution from a low note to a higher note. I think that'd be kind of nice. Yeah, something like that. So let's do another quick thing to make this just a bit cooler. Let's select all the chords by just clicking and dragging over them. Let's make them all shorter. And let's hold, it's either Control, Shift, is it Alt? It's one of these. There we go, Alt. And if you hold Alt and click drag, you can duplicate the notes. And now we have a little pulsing quarter note pattern. That's kind of nice. Let's go ahead and adjust the sound a little bit to make it a little bit, cooler. So let's open up the synth. And synths can be very intimidating at the beginning, but there's a really powerful thing in here that if you just touch this on most sounds, you can adjust them quite a bit. And that is the envelope. See how right here there's an amp envelope? And right now our attack, this is how quickly the sound gets loud. This right here. So if we just drag this over, what we've done is we've made it so it'll take longer to get loud and hopefully take the edge off of this sound that's going bump, bump, bump. We'll go wah, wah, wah. That's kind of what we want. So we're going to make this a little longer to try and do that. We'll make it a bit faster. Might not be quite enough. That's kind of nice. And we're going to just leave it at that. There's a whole bunch of other tools in here. There's a filter tab with one of these as well. And you could mess with this envelope to do cool things. But we're going to go ahead and leave it alone for the moment. So this is cool, but it kind of stands out in an odd way. So we've got notes that it's attached to a track. It's playing those notes. And this is the synth that it's using. Let's add some effects to this device chain. So what's going to happen is this is going to make the sound based on the notes we give it. And these are instructions to this synthesizer to play those notes. So after this, we've got audio. Let's go ahead and let's add in another device. And we have some effects down here, things that will change how it sounds. Let's add a reverb on at the beginning. So reverb is how sound bounces around in a room. So this is going to make it sound like it's in a hall or some other room. Right now, without this, it sounds very artificial. It's still going to sound somewhat artificial because it's a synthesizer, but we're going to go ahead and toss this reverb on just so it sounds like it's being played, somewhere on Earth and not in some weird spot where there's no reflections. That's pretty nice. Now, the next thing we want to do maybe is, hey, let's add a bass. So let's come in here. We'll select this track and call it the bass track. And we could, of course, color these things and do different things to them. But let's double click and drag over. So we'll have our bass be this yellow. And we'll click add device. And we'll go back up to instruments. And let's choose another Volt Mini. So here it is. But this time, we're going to use some presets. So right now we're on ambient keys for our preset. If we click down, you see we've got a bunch called bass. There's some for leads, keys, plucks. So let's go for a bass sound. And to hear the sound, so this is where having a MIDI keyboard can really come in handy. But you see how right now this orange is on? So that means that when I hit notes on the MIDI keyboard in front of me, which is like a digital computer that lets me play notes, or not a digital computer, it's a hardware, it's a piano. It's in front of me. I can connect it to my computer, and Amp Studio recognizes it. It connects through a USB. So if you have one of those, that's what I'm going to use because it makes it easy to preview sounds. But you see how right now the orange key is right here on this guy? We want it on this one. So this basically says when we play, which thing does it play? And right now we want it to play this synth. So we're going to use the MIDI preview, or it says in this case ARM for MIDI recording. We want it to play this. And there we go. We've got a bass. There's a bunch in here. You can pick the one you like. Let's go ahead and go with... Sure, let's go with the first one, and then we'll decide if we like it or not. Now, in here, how do you know what notes to pick? So there's a really easy way. We can actually copy this down, and now the bass has it. Now, how did I do that? So if you Alt, click, and drag, hold down Alt, click it, and drag, it'll copy the pattern. So now we have it down here, and let's keep it really simple. Let's select all these high notes. These aren't really good for bass. And let's just have it play the lowest notes. So now it's just going to play the low notes. In fact, does it remember our chords? No, it doesn't. We'd have to come up here for that. And there we go. Now, this bass, while it's cool, it is a bit bright, right? So let's look at a device for this. So if you come into devices, go down to effects. We got a bunch of effects here. I'm thinking a filter or an equalizer could do it. We've got an EQ right here. Let's go with the EQ Mini. And down here, you have your different controls. Now, everything's going to just be a little intimidating at first because it's all controls. But one of these we see labeled as the low pass frequency. And what a low pass does is it only lets low frequencies pass. So you'll see it very common, LP for low pass. So if we bring this down, we'll begin to hear the high frequencies on the bass go away. And on here, let's go ahead and make these lines just one big long note on each one. So we're outlining the chords with the bass, and we'll have the bass sort of be this long thing. So we're just gonna fill this pattern in. I feel like this is gonna work pretty well as a pattern. We'll bring this in, have one here, have one here, and have one here. Let's see. And maybe we'll have this one. What's the note on this? We're playing a C, so we'll have this play a C as well. And this is where if you know a little bit of keyboard and stuff, it's going to come in handy. We'll go over more of this stuff in future videos, but just so you see sort of the workflow. So we'll have this like up down thing here, and maybe we'll try chromatically going up to this note here. I don't know. We'll see. Maybe this is cool. You might move it around, try out some different notes. And we're going up to a C here. We're already playing a B. I don't know. We could go up above. Let's see if that would sound cool if we go up one note. And we could zoom in here so we can get a little bit better of a view. And here's the C. So let's go one note above so it goes down to the next note. If you don't know the theory yet, just think of it kind of as shapes. It's actually more useful than you would think a lot of the time. Cool. So to wrap this up and get our track going, let's add some drums. So drums, of course, are an entire can of worms, just like everything in here is. You could just go further and further with it. Let's stay with the simpler stuff for now. So if we go over here, we've got some construction kits, and in some of these kits are some drum beats. So you could write out all the drum parts yourself, but for the sake of time, let's just go into a construction kit and see what we have in terms of synths. Now we have here tempos. This is 125. These are at 110. These are at 90. Let's see if we can come across one. Let's move our tempo up to 125. This will make the drum loop line up really nicely. So it does speed up our track. This is why you might want to write your own. But it's not that noticeable. 5 beats a minute, it's hardly anything. So let's go ahead and come up here and let's just see what kind of drums we have. Maybe. I don't know. This has kind of a different vibe. Let's see down here what we've got for some of the others. That's the bass. Let's find the drums. Some more dance drums. Let's go into the drums themselves and see what we have. We have some top loops. These are the higher drums. These are drums just as they are. EDM drums. So it appears like they get faster the further we go here. Let's go ahead and you know what? It shouldn't be too crazy. Let's just really quick make our own drums. So we're gonna open up the one shots, or is this close the one shots? Whatever. We're here in one shots now. And we have some kicks. So let's go ahead and grab this and call it our kick. We'll add another one for the snare, and we'll add one more for the hi-hat. Now there are a bunch of ways to do this. I'm going to do it with samples. So let's grab this one. It loads up the kick, and let's zoom in, and it is control scroll to zoom in and shift scroll to move. And we're going to duplicate this. So right now this is on track 1. We're going to hold down alt and drag, and we are going to zoom out a little bit here. And so this is one measure. And we'll just make a simple drum loop for now. We'll just copy this over as our drum loop. So pretty easy. In general, you're going to want to stick with a pretty simple pattern for this. So I've got here, it hits on beat 4. So you see how it says up here 1.4. It's kind of hard to see on the computer because it's kind of a light color. Over here, we hit on the middle of the measure on beat 3, because in every measure there's 4 beats. And then we hit again on beat 1. And then I just repeat this pattern again. Cool. And so we've got ourselves a drum beat, and let's just put the snare on beat 3 every time. It'll act sort of as like a clock almost for us. So we've got our kick. Let's see if we can't find a good snare. Sure, why not? So we'll drop our snare in. We will clone it over. Whoops, you gotta let go of alt when you do this. So I'm let go of alt, holding alt, click drag, let go of alt, and then drop it. And we've got ourselves here. This should be over 1. And here and here. So this is all fine. Now this one sounds like, yeah, there's 2. That one sounded louder than the others. So there's a duplicate on top of that one. And we could, of course, add effects to these things. But let's go ahead, let's get our hi-hat in just so we can sort of feel this out. Maybe something short, something like that, maybe. Now the hat, we're gonna zoom in here for the hat. And we are going to drag this over, and the hat will be 16th notes. So we'll have a hat here, and this always gets me, the way you let go of things. There we go. And let's get rid of this. I'm just going to select these, hit Control C and Control V, and put them in on our measure. Control C. And Control V, Control V, Control V. So we have 16 note hi-hats. Now the volume for these tracks is down here underneath the track inspector. So let's go ahead and maybe bring this down a couple dB. Now on the snare, let's add a verb and get that sense of space going on. We're going to bring the size down a bit. This is the same thing as sort of having a smaller room. And maybe on this synth, now that I'm hearing it, let's come into the attack and release. You remember this thing? And let's maybe make this let's make the attack a little bit quicker here so that the sound comes in a little bit faster. And let's bring the sustain down. So now it's going to be this really short sound. Yeah, and you can begin to mess with where the kick sits, where the hat sits, but you see I'm beginning to get feedback from what I'm writing, and I'm slowly going to fine tune it into something closer to what I'd actually like. Right now I've got a skeleton, but it's not quite done. This is where you begin to add more effects. You begin to go into the kick and the snare and look more at the MIDI, get a little bit more into maybe the music theory and vibe out the track. But hopefully this gives you an overview of it. That's the majority of the workflow that you'll be doing, is laying down parts, listening to how they go, picking out your sounds and sequencing them. And that's really the core of it. After that, it's just adding to your techniques and things you can do. You might start doing some automation, which is automatically controlling things. Like, what if we wanted this to move and change during the track? Those sorts of things are more advanced. So that will be coming up in later videos. There's actually already mini videos on some of these topics up on Amp Studio that you can check out. Now, to render your song so you can share it with someone, you can click on the menu over here and go to Export Audio or Publish Song. So we're going to go to Export Audio. We'll call it like the demo song. And you can export as an MP3 or a WAV. If you're going to share it with someone and you're really serious about how it sounds, pick WAV. Just do it. For MP3, I always bump it up to the highest it can go. It can export just the loop section or the entire project. And you can have each track bounced individually. So maybe you have a friend who has a piece of software they like to use. You can give them the individual pieces and they can do like a remix or something to it there. And you can sort of go back and forth. You can also share the project with a friend so you could both work on the same project in Amp Studio. So that's pretty cool. But anyways, that is it. So let's just really quick go here. We will go for a WAV file. We'll hit export. It is going to render it. And then it downloads. And you can see there is demo.wav in my downloads. And that's that. So there's a quick overview. Hopefully, if you're brand new, this will get you up and running and doing some interesting things. And you can begin to explore specific sections of the program a little more in detail. If you have any questions about this, feel free to let us know down in the comments. Subscribe and hit that bell icon for future videos. And have a blessed day.